Have you ever been told that Israel's the fig tree? It's a popular teaching, folks, that's out there. In fact, it's been around for about 4 decades. If you've ever been taught that, you've probably also been told that we can practically gauge approximately the return of Jesus Christ based on when Israel flew her flag. We're going to discuss that belief and a whole lot more that you're not going to want to miss. In fact, I'm going to give a first for television. My name's Steve Cochran, and this is End Time Insights. Jesus is asked by his disciples, what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? He continues through Matthew chapter 24, as most people know, giving numerous signs. You get to verse 32, and this is what Jesus says after you see in verses 29 through 31 are his return. He gave all these signs and then his return. And he says this, verse 32, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. There is a teaching that started about in the 1980s, folks. I'm not going to give the man's name, I'm not going to talk about his ministry, but it was this. He said this, that Israel was the fig tree. Even though nowhere in Scripture does it say Israel's the fig tree, he said it was. No fact, folks, Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 16, we are told what God says Israel is. He calls them and he gives them their name, and it is the olive tree. Israel is the olive tree, folks, not the fig tree. Nowhere in Scripture does God ever say Israel's a fig tree. Only an olive tree. In fact, that's even their name. Why are we trying to compare? Folks, figs, olives have nothing to do with each other any more than apples and oranges. They have nothing to do with each other. Apples and oranges, figs and olives, they all have about as much in common with each other as the other. No. So back to this point, he made a book saying Israel's the fig tree. He said that based on when Israel became a nation, and he gets it from this verse, folks. I'll explain a little more in this verse. Supposedly, when its branches yet tender putteth forth leaves, that mean Israel. She became a nation. May 1948, she flew her flag, and he said, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. He said he took generations. This man who wrote this book, which is where we got this from in the 1980s, sold 15 million copies, mind you. The man was doing pretty good. Except a generation he said 40 years. He got that from Matthew chapter 1, where you see all the generations. They're 40 years apart approximately. He said, there's your generation. So since Israel became a nation in 1948, 40 years later took you to 1988, and this was all supposed to happen, and it didn't happen. So then people who bought into the teaching, 15 million people, folks, that is a lot of people, move the bar to 70 years as a generation. It's not 40 years, even though you got it. This is the guy that came up with the teaching. So they changed it 40 years to 40 years to 70 years, which took you to 2018. Then it even got moved to 2019, and nothing happened. So now we're moving it to, I guess, the people that buy into this teaching that Israel is the fig tree, even though nowhere in Scripture does Israel say she's the fig tree. God doesn't say she's the fig tree. Nothing, folks. We're now going to 80. We're moving it again. I would have to say, what is wrong with this at the moment? Why don't we once again look at the Scripture? Listen to this, folks. Listen to this. Is Israel the fig tree? Somebody show me where she's the fig tree. She's the olive tree. Verse 32, listen again. Now learn a parable. Folks, what's a parable? It's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning, isn't it? An earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, what things? Well, all these different signs that Jesus had been giving us in Matthew 24 before his coming. So likewise, when you shall see all these things come to pass, All these things, no one is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away. Folks, listen to me. If this was Israel, the fig tree was Israel, you know what Jesus should have done right there? When he said, so likewise? He should have said something along the lines of, when you see my people get back together as a nation, or something like that. When people come back home to their homeland. I don't know how he would have said it. He would have said something along those lines. If that's what he had meant by this parable, learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branches yet tender putteth forth leaves, you know that summer's nigh. So likewise, when you see my people return to their homeland. That's what should have been done if that's what Jesus was intending, and yet he didn't do that. But yet we somehow say, I don't know where we're getting. Go to Mark 11. We're going to start at verse 12. And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry, Jesus. And seeing a fig tree afar off, having leaves, he came, and happily he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, no man eat fruit hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. No man eat fruit hereafter for forever. Drop down to, let's go to verse 20. And on the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. Peter, calling to remembrance, saith to him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursest is withered away. And Jesus answered, said unto him, have faith in God. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say in this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast in the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but believe those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them. Folks, what's the takeaway from this? Is Israel the fig tree? If it is, God cursed the fig tree right here. No man eat fruit henceforth and forever. How long's forever? That's eternity, folks. So to sit and say Israel's the fig tree, and yet God cursed, Jesus cursed the fig tree for all eternity, never to bear fruit ever again. And yet we're going to sit and say Israel's the fig tree. How can Israel be the fig tree over in Matthew 24 and she's not here? Are we really going to fig pick? Little pun, folks. Are we going to cherry pick like this? She's the fig tree here, but she's not the fig tree over here. Folks, she's either the fig tree throughout or she's not. If God cursed Israel supposedly for forever, there would be no nation of Israel right now. And yet we have a nation of Israel, don't we? So I'm going to say, folks, you don't get it both ways. Perhaps Jesus simply was teaching his disciples certain circumstances. In this particular one, have faith in God. Anything's possible to you. And in the other one, when you see these things come to pass, just like when you see a tree begin to have budding on it, no, it's near, even at the doors. Maybe that's what Jesus was trying to teach us. Not that Israel is the fig tree. You can't curse it for forever and have a nation. It doesn't work. So that's just, again, one more thing on these lists that I've been going through. Folks, you really need to go through certain teachings that are on the website. Again, go to CochraneMinistries.com. Click on shows. There are 25 powerful shows there, folks, giving you teaching after teaching, and they'll show you things you've never seen. For those of you that want to know Daniel in a way that you've never seen it, please go to youtube.com/Cochrane Ministries and look at the most recent video I did. I rightly divide Daniel for you, and I show you in no uncertain terms. You will know that Daniel chapter 7 is progression. It's a storyline of empires and how it's going to hit the world scene. And the last thing we're going to see is the little horn. The little horn, folks. And you'll know where he comes from. And it's going to change the way you think. I would like you to get the book, get the graph at Cochrane Ministries. You can also call in. But if you want to preview this book, which has this stuff in it, folks, these things on this list are in this book. It's a life-changing book, I've been told, folks. People tell me all the time this changed their life. They say this is Daniel unsealed. That's what they say. You can view 9 chapters of this book for free at Cochran Ministries. It's a video that plays one video to the next and the next. It's right there in the middle of the page. Just click on the video and it'll begin playing. You'll be amazed, and you'll get to preview 9 chapters of the book before you even buy it. I'd like you to do that. Next week I'm going to be talking, hopefully next week I'm going to be talking about the beasts and their identity. Look for that to come soon. Till next time, take care and God bless.